1830. A steam locomotive crawls across open countryside for the first time. Within a generation, iron rails stretch to every corner of Britain. Villages become towns. Towns become cities. The railway reshapes the entire island. By 1870, more than 15,000 miles of track crisscross the British Isles. Every market town has a station, every village within walking distance of a platform. The railway is the beating heart of the nation. Country stations become the center of community life. Milk churns, post bags, newspapers, and parcels all arrive by rail. The station master is among the most respected figures in the village. His clock sets the time for miles around. For a century, this vast network endures. Through 2 world wars, the railways carry troops, munitions, evacuees, and the wounded. Steam locomotives become symbols of British resilience. The trains always run. The nation utterly depends upon them. But by the late 1950s, cracks appear. Car ownership doubles. Lorries carry freight that once traveled by rail. Roads grow wider. Meanwhile, branch lines carry fewer passengers with each passing year. The losses mount. By 1961, British Railways loses £300,000 every single day. The government of Harold Macmillan demands action. The Treasury seeks a man who can wield the knife, an outsider, a businessman, someone ruthless. The Minister of Transport is Ernest Marples. He co-owns Marples Ridgeway, a civil engineering firm that builds motorways. The man responsible for the railways also profits from the roads. No one questions this conflict. Not yet. On the 15th of March, 1961, Marples announces his chosen appointment, Dr. Richard Beeching, Technical Director of Imperial Chemical Industries, a physicist and engineer, a man who understands numbers and balance sheets, not sentiment, not nostalgia. Beeching's salary alone shocks the entire nation. £24,000 per year. 2.5 times more than any other head of a nationalized industry. More than the Prime Minister himself earns. The newspapers are utterly outraged. Beeching arrives at British Railways headquarters with a clear and brutal mandate. Make the railways pay their way. He assembles a team. For 2 years, they count every passenger, every parcel, every penny. The audit is exhaustive. The findings are devastating. 1/3 of the entire network carries just 1% of all traffic. Half of the 7,000 stations generate barely 2% of total revenue. The numbers tell a brutal story. Rural branch lines bleed money. A single stopping train might carry 6 passengers on a good day. Meanwhile, the station's staff, signals, and track must still be maintained. Fixed costs remain, whether one rides or 1,000. On the 27th of March, 1963, the report is published. The Reshaping of British Railways. 148 pages long. The press calls it the Beeching bombshell, the Beeching Axe, a death warrant for the railways. The numbers are staggering. 6,000 miles of track condemned. 2,363 stations marked for closure. 67,700 jobs to be lost. 55% of all stations gone. The report argues that only 1/3 of the network is commercially viable. The rest must close. Buses will replace trains. Roads will carry the traffic. The age of the branch line, Beeching declares, is finished. The reaction is immediate and furious. Across rural Britain, communities learn they will lose their trains. For villages with no bus service, this is a death sentence. Isolation becomes real. The countryside rises in protest. Petition after petition floods Parliament. Protest meetings fill village halls from Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands. Railway workers march through their towns. Banners read, "Save our line" and "Beeching must go." The anger is raw, but the Conservative government accepts the report. Transport Minister Marples signs closure after closure. The first axe falls in the summer of 1963. Stations that have stood for a century receive their death notices. In October 1964, Labour wins the general election. Harold Wilson's party had pledged to halt the closures. Britain's railwaymen dare to hope. But the promise proves hollow. Labour closes even more lines than the Conservatives. Barbara Castle becomes Transport Minister under Harold Wilson. She slows the pace of the closures, but she does not stop them. Some of the most controversial closures happen under her watch. Political promises crumble beneath the Treasury pressure. The Great Central Railway falls. The last main line built into London, completed in 1899. A magnificent route from Sheffield through Leicester to Marylebone. Closed in stages. By 1969, the line is gone. The Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, beloved by enthusiasts, closes on the 7th of March, 1966. A route that once carried holiday crowds from the Midlands to the Dorset coast, the stations fall silent forever. The Waverley route from Edinburgh through Hawick to Carlisle closes in January 1969. 98 miles through the Scottish borders erased. An entire region left without any railway at all. The borders are severed from the network. Across Britain, the pattern repeats. The last train arrives. The signal drops. The station master locks the door. Weeds begin to grow between the sleepers. Within months, a century of service is reduced to rust and silence. Replacement buses are promised, but rarely last. Commercial operators serve only the profitable routes. Within a few years, many villages lose their bus service too. The car becomes the only option. Those without one are stranded. Small businesses near closed stations wither. Hotels in seaside towns that relied on rail visitors close their doors. Holiday resorts along the Devon and Cornwall coasts lose their lifeline. Entire local economies collapse without warning. The closures devastate the Welsh valleys. Branch lines that carried miners to the pits and families to the coast are ripped away. Communities that gave Britain its coal now cannot reach the nearest hospital by public transport. Scotland suffers deeply. The Highlands and borders lose vast stretches of track. Remote villages that once had daily connections to Edinburgh and Glasgow are cut adrift. The railway map of Scotland shrinks to a skeleton. Yet Beeching himself does not survive. In 1965, the Labour government declines to renew his contract. He returns quietly to ICI. The man who reshaped the railways leaves without ceremony. His name, however, endures. Beeching's second report, The Development of the Major Railway Trunk Routes, proposes even deeper cuts. A core network of just 3,000 miles. The government rejects it. Even politicians now fear the axe has swung too far. The closures continue through the late 1960s, even without Beeching at the helm. Line after line falls. Barbara Castle introduces the Transport Act of 1968, finally allowing subsidies for socially necessary routes. It arrives too late. Many lines are already gone forever. On the 11th of August 1968, the 15-guinea special departs Liverpool. It is the last mainline steam passenger train on British railways. 470 seats sold at 15 guineas each. 150 years of steam end on a single Sunday. The locomotive Oliver Cromwell hauls the final train 314 miles through Lancashire and Yorkshire. Thousands line the route to watch it pass. Grown men weep beside the tracks. The age of steam dies in the fading summer light of that Sunday evening. The signal gantries come down. The track is lifted. Station buildings are sold, demolished, or simply left to rot. Across rural Britain, the physical traces of the railway disappear with shocking speed. Nature reclaims what industry once proudly built. Platforms vanish beneath brambles. These stories of Britain's lost railways must not be forgotten. If you value documentaries preserving our island's history and the struggles of ordinary communities, please subscribe to this channel. Press the bell icon for notifications. Like and share this film. Help these voices echo through generations. Abandoned railway cuttings become overgrown footpaths through the silent countryside. Viaducts stand in empty fields like Roman ruins, purposeless and magnificent. Station houses become private homes where roses bloom between rusted rails. The railway ghost is written indelibly across the landscape of Britain. The promised savings never truly materialize. Without branch lines feeding passengers onto main routes, trunk line revenue falls as well. The network becomes smaller, but not cheaper. The accountant's sums, it transpires after the damage is done, were fatally flawed from the very beginning. Ernest Marples, the minister who appointed Beeching, flees Britain in 1975. He escapes to Monaco at very short notice to avoid prosecution for tax fraud. The man who killed the railways to build the roads dies abroad in disgrace and permanent exile. By the 1980s, Britain begins to understand the full cost of what was lost. Traffic congestion chokes towns that Beeching stripped of their railway stations. Pollution rises steeply. Rural isolation deepens into a permanent condition. The cuts cost the nation far more than they saved. Academics confirm what communities always knew. A study finds that 50% of all railway stations in Britain's most deprived and left-behind neighbourhoods were closed directly by the Beeching cuts. 74% of these areas now have no station at all. But not everyone accepts the verdict of the Axe. Volunteers step forward. Railway enthusiasts begin preserving what they can. Across Britain, heritage railways are born from the wreckage. Old locomotives are rescued from scrapyards. Abandoned track is relaid by hand. A quiet resurrection begins. The Bluebell Railway in Sussex becomes one of the first preserved lines, reopening in stages from 1960. Volunteers restore stations, polish brass fittings, and repaint signal boxes in their original colours. Steam lives on through the devotion and determination of ordinary people. Across the country, more than 150 heritage railways now operate on former British Rail lines. The North Yorkshire Moors Railway, the Severn Valley Railway, the West Somerset Railway. Each one is a living memorial. Each one carries passengers where Beeching said none would travel. Slowly, painfully, some lines begin to reopen for regular service. In September 2015, a 35-mile stretch of the Waverley route is restored, reconnecting the Scottish borders to Edinburgh after nearly half a century of isolation. The trains return at last to the borders. In November 2021, the Dartmoor line from Crediton to Oakhampton reopens under the Restoring Your Railway programme. 11 miles of new track are laid. Within 12 months, more than 250,000 passengers have used this single restored line. The demand was always there. The Levenmouth Rail Link in Fife, closed to passengers in 1969, reopens in 2024 after decades of determined local campaigning. Communities that Beeching declared unprofitable proved that they were merely unheard. The railway returns to towns that never stopped waiting for it. Plans advance across Britain to restore more of what was lost. The Portishead line near Bristol, Camp Hill in Birmingham, Tavistock to Plymouth. Station by station, mile by mile, the long and patient work of reversal has begun at last. The map slowly fills again. Richard Beeching died on the 23rd of March, 1985. He never expressed public regret for the closures. To the end, he maintained that he had simply followed the numbers. But numbers cannot measure what a village loses when the last train departs its platform forever. The branch line was never merely a transport route. It was a lasting connection to the wider world. It carried children to school and workers to their jobs. It brought newspapers each morning and carried letters home at night. It held whole communities together. An empty platform, a rusted signal, a track that leads into the weeds and vanishes. Across Britain, these silent monuments remain. They stand witness to the day a nation took an axe to its own railways, and they wait for the trains that may yet return.